We've never seen anything like this in industry. We've never seen anything in distribution and retail like this before. Everyone is their own storefront if they want to be.
This is The Strategy Inside Everything. I'm Adam Pierno. All right, welcome back to another episode of The Strategy Inside Everything. This is going to be a great conversation today. For once, it is not born of Twitter. So everybody listening should be happy. We'll get a little break from that. But this is going to be exciting. I have Grant Owens, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Critical Mass. Grant, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. We've been catching up this morning already and kind of trading stories, and that we've been having almost too much fun to remember to start recording. So I know your calendar's packed. I wanted to make sure we actually hit recording, got going here.
I appreciate it.
Hey, Grant, can you do me a favor and run everybody through the background, the high notes of your career, and just tell them how you got to be where you are at Critical Mass?
Yeah, of course. Happy to. And thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
So I guess I just entered my 20th year of agency life. Came out to New York right from school and started with a small design agency of about 50 people. And that was sort of the first .com boom. And it rolled into a bunch of other companies, a lot of larger agencies, worked for Euro RSCG for a time, and then worked for Razorfish for 11 years. And this has just entered my fourth year with Critical Mass. I've always kind of been on the digital side. I really was a product of my time. When I came out in 99, I was doing some coding, doing an internship for Procter & Gamble, publishing the Cincinnati Enquirer, the local newspaper online, and sort of got my hands in on that. So like a lot of folks that came out of school at that time, we moved into the digital space.
Yeah, it's like right place, right time, huh?
Totally. Yeah, very lucky.
I think for people that are coming into the industry now to not understand, my first couple internships and things, they were still doing stat cameras and board mechanicals, and then we started using the internet.
Yeah,
I don't think people understand if someone's been in the business around 20 years. 99, pretty much every company had a website. Well, maybe not, but the bigger ones all did.
Yeah.
And that entry for professionals into figuring out how the web is going to work is so much different shape and size than what we have today.
Yeah, it really. We were at the throes of that moment in time. Some people know this story, but when I was 19 years old, we were presenting to the CEO of Procter & Gamble on a project that we did as interns, because you had a generation of executives wanting to learn what the next generation knew about digital. And man, how lucky can you get to be with that, have that experience at such a young age?
Yeah, that exposure is huge.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And what's funny that I did not intend to do that segue, but it does tie right into our topic, because that level of exposure from you as an intern, and I had the same experience where just by being a little younger and exposed to the tools, I was brought in to show some of the older, more seasoned people at the agency or at brands, how is this all going to connect?
Yep.
That was still the kind of gatekeeper. Well, the CEO, Grant, wants to see you, and you get a chance, you get 40 minutes to showcase what you've done in the context of this one project.
Yeah.
So you had a chance to knock their socks off or not. But today, pretty much anybody with a phone gets that same chance for exposure.
That's right.
Using Instagram, TikTok, whatever tools they want to use.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I think I had a distinct advantage because I did a little HTML, and you needed to know it then to kind of know how it worked, and then how to apply it to things. And we were kind of testing things. We had that environment in college in particular where you had time to test things out, see how they worked, play around with them, where companies that were doing their 9-to-5 regular job didn't have the time on the side to figure those things out necessarily. So we offered companies a chance to, as you said, and you did, kind of look at a different angle and think about how it would affect the business.
Yeah. And how do you think coming in through Razorfish, I mean, you were there for over a decade during a really crazy time. I mean, you were there during the 2.0 era, the transition from brochureware digital through social.
I've seen a lot. I mean, the other really fortunate aspect of the time that I've worked in the agency environment is that there's been so much volatility. So I've seen the ups and downs. I've seen the mergers and acquisitions. For a period of time at Razorfish, we were owned by Microsoft,
Right.
one of the stranger things, and then owned by Publicis. And so I've seen the shifts in the holding companies. All those experiences have, what a free education that I've been getting in how business works, because it has changed so much in that time. The shifts of the services we offer on the digital side, the growth of digital agencies and digital consultancies. It's been a good ride.
Yeah. I mean, I remember going to, I don't know if it was Amazon, but one of those early e-commerce sites and thinking, there is no way I'm putting my credit card in this thing. And now it's like, oh, Face ID, you just paid for your coffee. I mean, I'm like, all right, take my social security number, just go ahead.
Yeah,
we got it. I know you're gonna get hacked or leave it, published on the web somewhere in a server. And it's like, all right, well.
Well, do you remember? Yeah, and do you remember the days when you used to cross shop for price?
Yeah.
Remember those?
Yes.
Those were years ago, and now it's just like, well, you assume that Amazon is going to give you rock bottom pricing, and therefore let's just hit click to purchase.
Do you think that's a function of being older, of just like, I value my time more, where I say, well, it'll be close enough for Blues if I order this and I save $1, or if I spend an extra $1, it won't kill me. I mean, if it was a TV, it'd be a different thing, but I wonder.
Yeah, for a book or for some toothpaste or something, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think if I look at all the ways that Amazon has gotten their claws into me, it's unbelievably powerful. We've never seen anything like this in industry. We've never seen anything in distribution and retail like this before. So I think there's a lot of factors at play that cause a lot of us to just click to purchase right away and assume that we don't need to do the cross shopping.
Yeah. I mean, especially for the Amazon brand that has ubiquity, 100% awareness, probably. I haven't done a study, but I would imagine it's in the high 90s.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that infrastructure though, because you were sharing some articles with me, and we were talking before about disposable brands and how easy the infrastructure created by the giants, by Google, by Amazon. If you have AWS, if you have a Shopify account for $12 a month, really, the hardest part is getting a following or getting the attention. Yeah.
Well, I think, as you were saying, the barriers to creating a brand have dropped decidedly. What it takes, $1,000 drone and a $1,000 DSLR, and you have what feels like full production company quality experiences. And we've seen that across multiple industries. So all these factors at play, disruptors that are looking at old industries and where they make a margin and how to eke out a margin from them, or how to interrupt them, and then taking consumer grade tools that feel professional grade to the untrained eye, and launching a brand. It's really unprecedented what we've seen brands be able to do in such a short period of time.
Almost when you talk about consumer grade tools and the untrained eye, I really don't even notice it except in cinema. Cinema is the only time my critical eye cares. If I'm watching a TV show and I can tell that it was shot on digital, and maybe I'm like, oh, I could see the edges, I could feel the digital edge there versus the film grain, I don't care. Netflix show, I'm good with it. When I paid my $12 to sit in a theater, I don't want to feel that feeling.
Completely. And I love the shifts that are happening. There's a fascinating statistic. A couple of years ago, I was sitting through PwC presenting their media outlook report, and they shared that there were more films created in Nigeria than the U.S. So if you look it up, you'd be shocked to see it's called Nollywood. So instead of Bollywood or Hollywood, it's Nollywood. And you have people with access to technology now, with creative inspiration, producing films, and it's really quite awesome what we've enabled the average person to go do and create. But if you're a brand, there's a downside to that, because if you're a legacy brand, you risk getting displaced.
Well, let's dive in there, because you've been with the big guys. You've seen P&G from the inside. You were at a holding company that was owned by Microsoft. So you've been inside there. I've worked at Verizon and seen it as well. These legacy brands are now in this weird position where on the one side you have influencers or creators or individuals. Let's take influencer out of there because I think it's too tinged, but individuals who have fashion sense or style, and now they have the capability to, they have reach capabilities, and the means for production are cheap and easy, and they can kind of essentially just piggyback on everything that already exists. On the other side, you have these giant legacy brands that always seem to be stretching this way towards the individual to try to steal the cultural import. Mm-hmm. How should they be thinking about it without giving away the advantages they have? And do the advantages they have matter?
The advantages they have, I think, matter less and less. And it's proven out over time. I think it was, in the mid 50s and 60s, the average tenure of a Fortune 500 company was something like 60 years. And in 2015, the average tenure of a Fortune 500 company, I think, was 10 or 11 years or maybe 15 years. I mean, we're seeing globalization, we're seeing access to creation, like you were talking about, that has challenged everything that sort of legacy large industry had built, had spent capital expenditures on getting displaced or the chance of being displaced. So I think legacy brands have to do a little bit of both. My advice would be to work on both ends of that, to work on the economies of scale, but to also, think big, but act small. And that's what we see disruptive brands doing. They act very small, and that gives them an initial advantage.
Well, I think in a lot of the articles that we were reading, there was, influencers who had an eye for style, an eye for fashion, began creating their own looks, began creating their own product for themselves. And then essentially people would come to them and say, hey, I really like that thing you created. Can I buy one for you? Can I have a piece for a show? Can I do X, Y, and Z? Holy crap. That is not unlike the executives at P&G coming to you and saying, Grant, I really like this website project you're working on. Would you come show it to the team? Because it's very similar and weird.
Yeah. I mean, everyone is their own storefront if they want to be. And I think that's what has shaken up, as you were calling it, kind of the disposability of brands. And also, if you look at just how much data we've driven into evaluating or measuring the success of a brand or a product or even a campaign, we can measure almost in real time whether something's popping in culture, and if it's not, shut it down. So you could imagine a day that we get to where a brand's lifespan is a week or a month, depending on whether or not it's taking hold.
And are you talking about let's define the word brand? Are you talking about a corporate brand as part of a legacy brand, or an upstart brand?
Like a product brand,
Yeah.
Mars company is creating Snickers, but Snickers, the analog to a Snickers could come and go if it didn't take hold. And we've got sort of this short-term thinking that's been driven through industry from the street and that quarterly focus that we have. And if something's not working, we have the means and the measurement to shut things down or throw gas on them if they are. And I think the speed at which that turnover is happening is unprecedented.
Yeah, that's part of the fail faster mantra. Yeah. It's almost become, from P&G or from Mars or a huge conglomerate, that type of failure, they would have done 3 years of market research to confirm that new candy bar or that new food product would be successful.
Yeah.
But they've bought into the tech mindset of go, fail fast, break things, and we'll just pull it off the market, which is not helping them in the grand scheme of things, because they're creating gaps in the shelf for new brands to come in. If you look at all the milk substitutes,
Yeah.
It's pretty wild each month to go in and see who's still there the next month.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. If you think of companies like Brandless, creating a lot of those household CPG products, trying to take out the cost of marketing. Although you could argue it's ironic that it's called Brandless and they have an aesthetic and all that. So it goes both ways. But yeah, the turnover in that and the ability to enter a new product into the market and see if it works is something that, I think it's an awesome time to be a strategist or a brand planner because there's so much volatility. You're constantly on your toes about, if you're working with a legacy large brand, how could it be displaced? If you're working with a new startup, what are the models that we could, for very low cost, enter into the market with? It's a fun time to be doing this work.
It absolutely is, because you can rewrite the book every single day with every single project that you take on. How important, we used to think of awareness. My understanding of awareness has shifted quite a bit. We used to think of awareness in the Anheuser-Busch, 80s, 90s, early 2000s era as U.S. citizens, adults 18 to 34, 18 to 44, and we were shooting for this ubiquitous awareness, like we were just talking about with Amazon. But you only need awareness with your customer set, really, which is why, if you have a good Instagram account and a good following, and I'm saying Instagram, but you have a good social presence and you have your own storefront, you can still create a brand that matters to people and is relevant to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fragmentation of product has kind of paralleled the fragmentation of media, and yeah, I often think about that relationship to entertainment and media, and will those big, massive concert bands exist anymore? Will the Beatles ever be replicated because of the fragmentation of viewership and listening? And will monolithic brands ever be replicated? Will the one brand to rule them all in a category be replicated? I don't know. It's a fascinating thing to think about, and for a brand to make it to that level in this day and age is decidedly harder.
Yeah, we can say with 100% confidence that the Beatles will not be replicated, but it's harder and harder. You see every year the Super Bowl can't find an act that is big enough for the audience, and it doesn't even make sense to have a band that big any other time during the year, except that one February Sunday where they need an act that'll please, whatever, the millions of people that are watching it.
You mean Maroon 5 didn't do it for you?
Maroon 5 was fine, but they had to bring on some, now you see every time they have 2 or 3 different bands pooling, the Red Hot Chili Peppers have to be trotted out because there's guys that are 40 plus that are like, oh, okay, I know that. That's good. I don't know who this Bruno Mars guy is, but, right? And he was great, but I was not exposed to him until then.
Yeah, fair enough.
Do you think you just kind of blew my mind the way you just flipped through that idea of, will we ever have another Beatles? And where my brain started going was, is it a function of business potential capability? Are companies able to generate that sort of product and brand that are interesting enough? Or as consumers, as humans, do we just not care? And I'm not loyal and it doesn't matter because Amazon will reward me with the next thing that will solve the task that I need or the emotional need that I have?
That's a great question. I think one huge factor in product marketing that I'm seeing is the factor of data, things like user reviews, ratings. Here's a thought. Do brands need to exist in their current form when consumers have perfect information? So if you go back to like the freshman year economics class and the idea of perfect information, if you had perfect information, the market would satisfy itself, and customers would know exactly the best product to get at the exact best price. And if you think in a way, Amazon basics or private label products with great user reviews and ratings are just that. And so that's removing the equity that brands have spent decades trying to create, and just putting it out to the market to satisfy that demand. It's a fascinating concept to me because, we see our clients, and we work with big blue chip clients, spending money on building brand equity that, if they're not careful in certain categories, particularly commodities, can be stripped out of the category instantaneously.
Yeah, and I've read different reports on those Amazon Basic products and loyalty and sales numbers that from most accounts, it does not sound like they're highly successful. They are just successful enough to make it hard for their partners to sell at the levels they need to sell at to make an Amazon venture profitable for them, or hit their goals, I should say. So that it really is an interesting thing, but because as a parent of two kids and trying to save 30 cents where I can, like, I don't really care if it's Arm & Hammer toothpaste or Amazon Basics. I just need something to put in the drawer for when I reach for it.
Yeah. I mean, and imagine in certain categories, again, I was talking to a client the other day, and Amazon comes up nearly every week in our relationships, just talking about the effect that it's having. And if you go on Amazon today and you search for digital cameras, you get 60,000 results. And if you go into Alibaba, you get 126,000 results. So with that in mind, then you start to sort by quality, and quality in that frame of reference is often reviews.
Yep.
And the algorithm kind of takes over. And I was thinking about how, like, if you're Sony and 3 or 4 decades ago, you were pouring money into the equity of your brand, that every Sony product is a quality product. Is that investment paying off in today's day and age? And it's a challenge.
Oh, I would argue though, Sony is still living off of the investment they made in the 90s.
Yeah.
Into that brand halo. They're only alive because of that money they invested in the brand, so that people over 30 understand that that Sony means quality, or meant quality. We just bought headphones. I bought a new set of running headphones, and I went to Amazon because I'm trained to do that. And every result was a brand I had never heard of. They're all, we were talking about starting your own brand, your own store from the point of like fashion and t-shirts and style. But if you're a Chinese factory, they are spinning up new brands and new products that are making pretty good products and getting them here for dirt cheap. It was 20 brands I never heard of, and then 3 that I had, Monster and Beats, and probably Sony was in there. And I was trying to be objective and say, well, what if let's try to get to perfect information. How would I do this? And I started looking at reviews. It's an insane challenge. I only need brand. I don't really care about brands. I ended up buying a pair that had good reviews and not a brand that I had ever heard of. I don't even know what it is. But I wonder, going back to my toothpaste analogy, I kind of need Crest to tell me what the value of the Amazon Basics is. Mm-hmm. I need one that's a benchmark.
Yeah, benchmark. Yep.
Right. And I only know if Kia is the right car for me once I go see the Maserati and go like, oh, that's a beautiful car, but it costs 4 times as much. Right. Mm-hmm. Or 8 times as much, maybe. I haven't shopped for a Maserati, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. I mean, it's almost like, the idea of retail footprint poaching. It's these other brands that have created the benchmarks for us that we then go shop another brand that cuts it on cost or has proven out higher quality based on user reviews. It's tough for legacy brands in that sense. You see the same thing in automotive. I worked in automotive for quite some time, and even in automotive luxury, the Honda Accord is constantly cross-shopped because it represents a benchmark for what $25,000 to $30,000 should get you.
Right. And safety and performance. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's a known entity. It's a known quantity of quality, of price, of functionality. So people are shopping Mercedes and BMWs and Lexuses against the Honda Accord, just to your point, to see where the benchmark is.
Yeah. And to that point, it probably kills Honda, because they go, well, if I go and look at the 3 Series or, the entry level of each of those luxury makers, I go, well, for another $7,000, I can have that logo on my car. That's pretty sweet.
That's right. And on the flip side, if you take that analogy of you shopping for headphones, well, okay, so I see the Sony ones for, $40, but for the same quality of user, according to the user reviews, for the same quality, I can get those other ones for $20.
Right.
It's quite eroding to brands.
Yeah. And when you buy one of those products, and I've tried this a lot, when you buy one of those brands you've never heard of, the first thing when you open the box is, do you like these? Go leave a review. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the English is not translated well. Sometimes it's beautiful and really well done, but it always is doing that. Whereas if you go and buy a product from a legacy brand, it might be in there now in 2019, but it is probably third or fourth. The quick start kit is on top, and register this product. And then third or fourth thing might be, leave us a review if you have time, please.
Yeah. The other factor you find there, and we've seen it in a couple of our client categories, brands I can't name, but the counterfeit problem is extremely real on Amazon. We had a client that whose product was being sold counterfeit on Amazon, and it was such a close facsimile of the real product that the people would call in to their own customer service, and if it wasn't working, ask for a refund. And then the client had to say through a couple hours of effort, figure out that it's not actually a real product of theirs, and tell the person that they have a counterfeit. And just imagine the cost to the genuine brand of doing that level of business and customer service for a counterfeit product. It's outrageous.
Yeah. And it still hurts their brand. The experience that customer got is still reflected on the brand and not the counterfeiter.
Yeah. That they can't get the counterfeit product off the shelves. I think, I'm not speaking out of turn here, I think a lot of customer categories or company categories would say Amazon's not doing a good enough job policing that. And I know they're trying, but it's a very real issue. And in this world you were describing with all those products available to you, a lot is getting eroded because of that.
Yeah, it's breaking down everything.
Yeah, totally.
There was this story going around. There was another an Instagram star who had started her own line and kind of followed that same trajectory that we were talking about earlier, where she decided to create her own line of T-shirts. It's called ERA. And I think you've heard this story. She has 2.6 million followers, but she failed to sell 36 T-shirts. And I think the time frame that they were quoted was 2 weeks. And it was considered a fail. And, social media went crazy critiquing this girl and making fun of her. And one of the questions that I haven't seen an update on the story, but why is 2 weeks the threshold? Like, why is, so she has 2.2 million followers. That's great. She sold 36 units. That's terrible. But I guess at some point she said, well, I guess this isn't going to work. The media called it a wake-up call here on Business Insider. So how disposable are we talking about when we're talking about brands? Is that, she ordered these T-shirts and they didn't sell immediately and she wasn't on the Ellen show, and so that's it? She should retire from creating products? Or what? That doesn't sound quite right.
I don't know if I'd encourage her to quit altogether, but yeah, I think that is the speed at which we're often moving. What pops in culture pops for a matter of hours and goes away. Yeah. Do you remember, have you heard of the Amazon coat? Like if you say to someone in New York, particularly say a woman between the ages of 20 and 50, hey, do you have the Amazon coat? They would know exactly what you meant. So it's this coat that, and I have no idea what the brand is. It's a no-name brand, but it started selling just because of the look of it, the design of it. And it became so popular last winter that I couldn't walk to work without seeing it. Seeing 10 of them. Yeah. And my wife would be ashamed that I'm telling this on a podcast, but she got one after a friend of hers got one because she liked it, and it kind of took over. It was a viral phenomenon, and she stopped wearing it because it became so common in a fraction of a season.
That's insane.
I mean, it was like a mayfly. It had like a 1 week lifespan in Manhattan,
and that's a successful brand.
Totally successful.
So the opposite, this example I was giving you didn't sell. this poor company has a hit on their hands, and they're going to be next year trying to figure out what they're going to do because no one's going to want this damn jacket because now everybody has one.
Yeah. I mean, if you just do it, if anyone does a Google search for the Amazon coat, it will immediately appear and you will see dozens of articles about this massive phenomenon that happened in a couple weeks time span.
I live in a place where we don't have coats, so I'm not familiar with the Amazon.
Fair enough. They were everywhere. Trust me, they were everywhere out here.
I will add a link for sure.
Not today though. It's 93 in New York today. So.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The Amazon coat is put away for good.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Well, do you think brands that we've for a long time we had media burnout or overexposure, and you still think about that a little bit, and that Amazon coat story, can that be true of products too? Like I think of going back to headphones, I think of Beats where everybody had the same over the ear pair of headphones, and then kind of Beats became too popular, too common. So now there's 10 other varieties of things that are almost identical to Beats, but they don't have the B on them.
Yeah, I think there's a very real thing happening in a lot of categories. It's not just apparel, but certainly that's one where it happens, and it's part and parcel to that industry. But I do think that brand overexposure is a challenge, and brands I think are constantly marching that line between being exclusive enough to feel special, but not so special that everyone has to have one.
Right. Yeah. I guess that
brands that can do that. I mean, you look at an Apple as an example, of course, and their ability to sort of democratize premium products is pretty impressive.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And then I look at Burberry and taking that pattern and going from being an exclusive, couture brand and putting it on everything and essentially licensing it across everything, almost to the point where you go through Target and you'll see that pattern.
Yeah.
And now it's faded away again.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what place that holds in culture. Is it now a luxury brand again, or are they trying to go back to exclusivity? And I kind of look at it almost like as a cop out, like, well, you tried to cross the line. It worked for 2 seasons. And now what did that do to the brand in the long term? Or I don't know what the long term even means anymore. Maybe 2 years is the long term.
Well, you raise a good point. Another factor that I've seen in licensing, it's like the perfect storm of timing with brands, legacy brands that say from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that started licensing, and then the rise of digital consumerism. I'll tell you a quick story, an example of this. My brother-in-law was shopping for a riding lawnmower, and we were talking about it, and I had always had in my mind that John Deere riding lawnmowers really retain their value. So, and it's true, if you go today and you look for a used John Deere, it's often $300, $400, $500, $600 more premium used than the next closest brand or a mid-street brand.
Uh-huh.
They're just considered quality. So we were looking at them, and he was going to buy a new one, and I said, well, hey, you might pay a little more for the John Deere, but if you ever want to sell it, it'll hold its value. Turns out there's actually 2 types of John Deere riding lawnmowers in the world right now. There are those that are licensed and have a Briggs & Stratton motor inside of them, and they're sold through Lowe's and Home Depot and others. And then there's the true John Deere.
Right. You have to go to the dealer, the John Deere dealership.
Yeah, you have to go to the dealer, and it's it's John Deere through and through, if you will. And with digital consumerism, that's been found out. So the idea of perfect information, the idea of access to the reviews, the idea of knowing what's on the inside because we are more informed as consumers. Bad timing for a brand like John Deere to put a non-John Deere motor in that thing, right?
Yeah, well, on the one hand, I say, well, they have half of their, probably more of what's on the street, but more of what's being used is the inferior product. And almost that makes me feel better about the quality of the brand in a weird way, because I go, yeah, but if I get the original one, that is still the gold standard of riding mowers.
Interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. That's a very informed viewpoint.
It's a very overthinking viewpoint, I would say.
I guess the question will be in 10 years when my brother-in-law, he didn't end up buying that one, by the way, but when the person goes to sell that John Deere, does it still command a premium? And if the answer is no,
right,
they've got a problem on their hands.
Yeah, it'll have to erode. And maybe if you're John Deere, you're saying we don't want a healthy resale market. We want to go into forced obsolescence like tech because we want to sell more new units and move more units through Lowe's and Home Depot.
Yeah.
Which is gross.
And if you look at a lot of those categories, we were shopping for outdoor furniture recently, and it's the same product with 5 or 6 different labels on it.
Yes.
So you can find it in 5 or 6 different stores, all said to be designed by a different designer.
Yep.
It's the exact same.
Yeah. We love doing the thing where you go to Wayfair and then you try to see if you could find it through image matching on like Target or Walmart. You can almost always find it between the big box stores. You can find it at 3 out of 7 of them.
Exactly.
Every single product. And it's off by $10 depending on your zip code, essentially, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, manufacturing companies aren't doing themselves any favors right now in a volatile brand environment.
No, they're trying to cash in the same way that I think a lot of the influencer stories are, where we can make money now. Let's try to strike while the iron's hot. And it's not that they're not thinking about the future. It's that there is no future to consider. Like this, we only have 2 weeks to make our mark. Let's go make it. And then we'll move on to the next thing and figure out what that is. Yeah,
that's true. And I think we're going to go through an era of brand erosion for all the reasons we've been discussing. But at some point, and I don't know when it'll be, maybe it's a decade, maybe it's 2, we'll come back. We'll come back to what connotes quality, what connotes a known entity. Because I think there is going to be, if there's 125,000 digital cameras available on Alibaba, it's paralyzing. And we do need, I think, as a consumer base, we do need the brands that we know and trust. But they're going to have to clean up things like licensing. They're going to have to clean up things like counterfeit. They're going to have to clean up things like partnership deals that have gone too far upstream from what they normally do, and stand for something again.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it. This was fun. This was a lot of fun chatting about this.
Yeah, same. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for making time on this hot 93-degree day. I know you won't be seeing any Amazon coats today.
We will not, but do a search. You'll find it. It's quite popular.
Where can people find you online, Grant?
Mostly Grant Owens. At Twitter, you can find me at Grant Owens. That's probably the easiest.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And once again, I really appreciate you making an hour for me.
Hey, Adam. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Very good.
Cheers.
Your feedback means everything. Send us a tweet at @apierno or @strategy_inside. Leave us a review on iTunes or whatever platform you're listening to. And please, please, please share this podcast with your friends. Let people know you like it, and send people you want to be guests our way. We would love to hear more. The Strategy Inside Everything is produced and hosted by Adam Pierno. For information about the show or to find out how to be a guest, you can go to adampierno.com/podcast. For information about Adam's books, Underthink It and Specific, or to find out how to invite Adam to be a speaker at an upcoming event, please go to adampierno.com/speaker. Thanks for listening.